Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School. And I got to tell you first right off the bat, I've shot this beginning segment of this video about 3 times, and that's not like me. But I'm trying to condense it down to its most simplistic form for you so I don't take up a bunch of your time. So we have a set of knots that we teach at the basic class, and there's 10 of them. And they're the most useful knots for a camping, survival, or emergency scenario, in my opinion, at a basic level. And they also transition well. Most of these knots will transition from one to another, or multiple knots can be tied from the beginning of one knot. And they also transition well to future classes so that they can be used at the intermediate and advanced level as well, as we're compounding knots and techniques as we go. What we're going to do today is we're going to set up a mock rope corral here, which is nothing more than a place you're going to tie knots. And we're going to set up a ridge line that's got several of those knots on it, and then tie some knots off of that ridge line. And that's going to be our rope corral. And it would be a simulated test that you would give, say, an instructor candidate at the end of a basic class to make sure that he fully owns all of these knot skills. Because a regular basic student that's not at the instructor level is not expected to know all of these knots by the end. Some of them are tied in their ridge line to begin with, and they're left there. Then they have to use that ridge line to set up. But because some of those knots and things are already there and on their tarps and things like that, it makes it much faster. And that's part of the system as well. But as an instructor, you're going to be expected to understand how to tie these knots on the fly all the time, as well as teach them. So this is how we're going to accomplish that. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm trying to use a piece of orange paracord here so everybody can see well. And so there's several knots that we can use that basically start in exactly the same way. And that is with an overhand turn of the rope. Now, this overhand turn could go this direction toward the working end of the rope, or it could go this direction toward what we'll call the standing end of the rope. And depending on what direction you go, depends on the outcome of that knot. But they start this way. And there's 3 of these that work well in conjunction with each other. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to take an overhand turn of the line, and we're going to take this line through that loop, just like this. And this is a bowline knot, and this is going to be the end line loop for our rapid deployment ridge line, and also it will be a knot we will use as an inline bowline on our tarp shelters. So we've made that overhand loop in the line, and we have taken the tail through that loop. Now, we can grab onto this bight, knowing that this is our loop, go behind the rope, and then back up through that loop. Again, knowing this is the loop and this is the actual knot. And when we pull this down, what's going to happen is you're going to form a bowline knot. Okay? You can always tell a bowline knot's correct with this on the inside and this U shape right, this horseshoe on the front. The good thing about this knot is no matter how much pressure you put it under, you can always just break the back of that knot and it will come undone. Now, we talked about transitions, okay? If we take that same methodology and we turn that rope over and we go toward the standing end and pull a loop up, just like this. Remember that, because we're going to use that a couple different ways, depending on which direction we go with this loop, up or down. So if we go on this particular example, we're going to go up the line, just like this. Now, if we take this and take our tag and go back through this loop that we have here up on top, we go back through this and trap that, and we pull this down, what's going to happen is we're going to end up with that same bowline knot. So it's a really easy way to tie that bowline knot is just by flipping that over, going up the line, pulling a loop through, grabbing the tail, putting it through, grabbing it on itself just like this, and pulling everything down snug, and you get that same bowline knot. Now, likewise, if we take that overhand turn in the line and we go up to the standing end, and we pull that loop through, just like we were doing a minute ago to make that bowline, but instead we put something in here, like a tent stake. When we pull on this, it now becomes a Marlin spike hitch. We now have a Marlin spike in the line, and no matter how hard we pull down away from that standing end, it's not going to move. But yet when we pull it out of the line, it comes undone very easily. So we're just going up, putting a loop through, sticking a toggle in, pulling everything down just like that. And you notice that that knot did not collapse on itself. It stayed with this loop on this side, this loop on this side, and the rope going across the stake. So let's look at that, because now what we're going to do is we're going to take that Marlin spike hitch and we're going to do the same overhand. Doesn't matter which way we go, except this time we're going to go down to the working end and pull that through. And when we do that and we pull on that loop, what's going to happen is it's going to collapse on itself. You see that? And now we formed a slip knot. And now this line can slip through, and we have what's called a slip knot. And we use that as a rope tackle later. Now, the reason to use that slip knot is for a rope tackle, like I said. So if we come up here and we go down to the standing end of the line, give ourselves a little bit of slack here, and go this direction. Now, when we pull that down, it becomes a slip knot. And if we wrap this around a tree and we're pulling against it like this, it will not collapse on itself, and we can use this to tension line. And this loop won't collapse because you create a slip knot toward the working end. If you do that toward the standing end, it's going to collapse on itself. So those three knots all transition very well from this single overhand turn and a bite in the line. Whether it's up or down is going to give you your end result. So you have three there. You have the bowline, you have the Marlin spike, and you have the slip knot. All of them tied very, very similarly. Okay, the next knot we tie in both ends of our cord no matter what. We always start off with what's called a double overhand stop knot. If we just tie a pretzel knot in the line, that's basically going to give us a single overhand knot or a single overhand stop knot at the end of the line to keep it from slipping through. What we want is a double. So we're going to make that pretzel, and then we're going to go around again like this and collapse that down just like this. And now we have what's called a double overhand stop knot, which gives us a little bit more bulk and weight at the end of the line if we've got to throw the line, but also gives us more stopping power to not pull through something. Okay, the next knot we want to look at is called a Lark's head knot. It's also known as a girth hitch. It really depends on what you're tying it to and how you're using it. What we're going to do is we're going to take that double overhand stop knot and put that in the end of our line, just like this. All right? We're going to take a piece of our line and we're going to take a loop of line over an object and then pull the remaining two tails through that loop. Now, if you just pull this down like this, you have what's called a Lark's head knot. And it looks like this on the back. And you've got two tails sticking out of that. A couple things you can do here. You can actually pull this stop knot tail clear to the top if you need a long piece of cordage attached to something. And that stop knot will not let that release under tension. You can put tension on that, and that stop knot can't pull through. So you can use that to attach something directly to an object. When you pull this out, it all comes undone very easily. Or you could use that to attach a double line, like I said, and have a double set of lines like this. And you can also use this for a loop. We're going to talk about that now, because now that we have this, what we can do is we can take this piece of rope, and let's say this was one of our 2-foot pieces from our utility cordage, and I have videos on cordage management if you want to look at those, but we teach that in the Pathfinder Basic class, and you'll end up with a couple pieces of rope left that are like 2 foot long. And what we do with that is we take this end and we tie a single overhand knot or a double overhand. It depends on how you want to do it. If you use a double hand with 2 ropes, sometimes it gets a little unwieldy, but it can be done. And you tie that, crank that dude down. Now you got a big old giant hunk of rope on the end of this thing, right? With a lot of weight to it. And you have a loop. If you take that loop and all you do is fold it so you've got ears in it, all you've done there is you've made a Lark's head, right? So all I did was I took that piece of rope and I just twisted it in my hands like this to make a set of ears and folded it back on itself like that. And that becomes that Lark's head knot. What we're going to do is we're going to take that Lark's head knot, we're going to open that dude up, and we're going to put this stop knot through that Lark's head, and collapse it down on the rope just like this. And we're going to create what's called a soft shackle. Now, this can't pull through the Lark's head again because of the stop knot, and you have a loop here. So this could be used as a replacement for a shackle or a carabiner to attach something to something else that you want to hang off of this. This now becomes a shackling device. That's just like a carabiner. You open the carabiner up, and when you drop and close the gate, just like this, you have something that can't come undone, and you have a soft shackle. Now, that's all made with that Lark's head knot, but that Lark's head knot, again, can be used to attach anything to something else, or ropes to rope, anything like that will work. And you can take advantage of that stop knot at the end of the line on the single line to use as a stop knot to keep it from pulling through as well, like we talked about. So that Lark's head is important because it's very versatile. Okay, now we talked about that soft shackle a minute ago as a way to make a loop in the rope. If we want to make a loop in the rope that's going to be semi-permanent, that we're not going to undo to put something inside of, we're going to use that loop for another purpose. Then we want to make a loop of rope, and to do that, the best knot is a double fisherman's. To make a double fisherman's knot, all you're going to do is take a single piece of rope, just like this, and you're going to cross them over, basically so you got a set of bunny ears. And what I do is I kind of just take one rope and get it out of my way so I forget about it. I take this rope and I wrap it around one time, come around the back side, so I'm around it a second time, and then you're going to take both that end through both of those loops, just like this. And so you get this when you're done. And that's a little bit weird looking probably. I'm going to tie it again so that we get a double take on that. So I got my bunny ears here. I'm forgetting this side even exists, and I'm going to tie this one. It's easy to tie this. You go around your finger like this, then you know you've went 2 times, and you can basically just put this through that double loop just like this and pull it down, and that's going to give you that one side. Now that the one side is complete, I'm going to turn the rope around. Forget that's even there. Now I'm going to work with the other ear, do the same thing. Once around my finger, back behind, twice around my finger, bring this up, and bring it through both of those, just like this, and bring it down. And then when you pull this together, those 2 knots are going to butt up against each other and look like a barrel like this. And that gives you a very structurally sound loop that you can put a lot of tension on, and you're not going to degrade the rope much with this knot. So we're going to use this to make something called a Prusik hitch. So we need a couple of these for our rapid deployment ridgeline. Okay. Let's talk about a sheet bend knot. A sheet bend knot is used to connect 2 ropes, usually of different diameters. But if you're not putting it under a ton of tension, it really doesn't matter. But it's also very good for use on a tarp if you use like a triple sheet bend to make an improvised hammock. So you've got a loop of line here. And that could be a loop, or it could just be a bite in the line that created a loop. So we've got our loop. And what we're going to do is we're going to come up through the loop this way. We're going to come around the back side of that loop like this, and then back underneath this way. And we pull that down, we have a sheet bend. Okay? And we can pull on that pretty hard, and all you're doing is collapsing this on this. So if you definitely got that stop knot on the end, which we took off so we wouldn't have so much bulk in these demonstrations, if you had that stop knot on the end, there's no way it's coming through there. And that's not going to come loose without you breaking the rope. So what you'll do is you'll come up through the loop or the bite. You'll wrap around the back side of that biter loop and go back underneath the rope, just like this. And when you pull that down, you're going to have a sheet bend. Okay, so let's say this turn is a tarp. We've just folded a corner of a tarp over. And what we're going to do is called a triple sheet bend. All we're going to do is come up through the tarp loop like this, give ourselves plenty of tail to work with. We're going to come around this way just like we would before and come through. But then we're going to go around again and come through and basically stack it. And come around one more time and come through like this. So we've got a stack of 3 there. And we pull that down. Now we've got a triple sheet bend pulling on that loop of tarp. That's not going to come undone. That gives us a good secure connection for a tarp to a rope if that's what we need to accomplish. All right, so now we have to kind of go to the tree because we're going to use our Prusik loops and things like that on our ridge line. So we're also going to use a couple other knots on our ridge line that we talked about, our slip knot to make our rope tackle, and then a slippery half hitch we haven't talked about. So if this was our ridge line, we'd already have the bowline knot tied in the end like this. And we would just wrap that bowline knot around the tree and basically pull a loop through it, creating almost like a marlin spike. But we've really got a running bowline now. But we're going to put a spike in there, and that could be a stick, a tent stake, it doesn't really matter. Something that you can pull down tight on, snug it up against the tree. And as long as that's under tension, it's not going to go anywhere. When you want to get it undone, all you have to do is pull it out, and everything comes off the tree, and it's quick and simple that way. Again, the advantage to this end of the line loop versus just tying an overhand loop in the line is that no matter how much tension you put this under, you can get it undone, and it transitions well to other applications down the line. So now we've got this end of our line is set. Okay, so we've wrapped our line around a far tree, and our static end is on this end. Remember, we talked about that slip knot and how that slip knot's just to turn a bite in the line, just like this. We're just turning a bite in the line, and then we're going toward the working end so that when we pull that, it becomes a slip knot. When we pull that, it's going to become a slip knot. It can get bigger and smaller. But when we pull it from this direction, it won't slip. If we pull it from this direction, it's going to collapse down on itself. So it's important that we make sure we're tying a slip knot in this line because we're going to use this for a tensioning device. So the best way to do that is to come over here, get a little bit of standoff, flip a loop in the line, just flip your hand upside down the line, flip it over, and then pick it up and pull it through, just like that. That gives you that slip knot in faster speed. Then we're going to take our line through that to create a rope tackle that's going to tighten this up. And this is where the next knot comes in, the slippery half hitch. Now, once we pull this down to where we want it, we want to put a slippery half hitch in here. A slippery half hitch is as simple as pinching on this line and throwing a loop over the line and pulling the line back through it. So you've got basically just a loop going over, and you're pulling the line back through that loop. And when you draw it down, you've created a half hitch on the line against that rope tackle. And because you didn't pull the line all the way through, it's called slippery, so you can pull it right out and it comes undone. So again, we're just going to tighten that rope tackle and pinch, put a loop of line over, just like this, reach through and grab the line and pull it back up through. And that gives us that half hitch. And because we don't pull all this line through and we leave a loop there, it's now a slippery half hitch that we can just pull undone very, very easily. And the same thing with a slip knot. If we take all this line out and we just pull on it against the standing end, it will also pop right out of the line. So it makes everything easy to recover that way. So let's tie this back up. Again, rope tackle from a slip knot and a slippery half hitch. And now we're ready to work on our ridge line to put our Prusik loops on. All right, so now that we have our ridge line in place, we can put a Prusik loop or Prusik hitch. This is a Prusik loop. We're going to make a Prusik hitch. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take that loop and we're going to keep our knot toward the bottom, but not at the bottom, about like that, 2/3 of the way down. And we're going to bring this loop behind the line and pull the rest of the rope through that loop. And that creates what? A lark's head. If we pull that thing down till it's tight, we just put a lark's head on the line with a loop like we talked about. But we don't want to do that. What we're going to do with that is we're going to, instead of going through this loop one time, we're going to throw this loop one time, 2 times, 3 times. Then we're going to kind of dress things down as best we can here. And this one goes to the outside. There we go. Getting somewhere quick now. We're almost there. This one needs to go to the outside. This to the inside, there we go. Once you get that dressed down properly, you have a Prusik loop. So basically that's just 3 turns around the line instead of 1. You still have the same line going around the backside like you do with a Lark's head. It's just 3 times around. And the difference with this is that when you pull on this thing, it's tight. When you pull left and right, it should self-lock. It's not going to do that very well on 2 ropes that are the same diameter. But when you put bank line on a Kermantle rope, like paracord, and you pull sideways on it, it locks right down. So this is made really for 2 different diameters of rope, one being Kermantle. And that's not what we have here, but we have the Prusik knot or Prusik hitch with our Prusik loop on our ridge line. So we know the knot, we're just not using the proper materials for the application. Okay, so I've done the same thing with a piece of orange paracord now, so that you can kind of see what that looks like and how well it bites on the line when you pull side to side with something that's smaller diameter than the rope you're using. You get that locking, and that's where that Prusik hitch really shines. So now we're going to take our bigger piece of rope and we're going to use it to make a soft shackle, which will demonstrate our Lark's head and our double overhand stop knots. All right, so here's our bite with our double overhand stop knot. And if we just take that and fold it over and make a set of ears, fold the ears backwards, we can wrap that around, put the knot through the Lark's head and tighten the Lark's head down. And now we have a soft shackle that's attached to the line, and it's not going to come off. Now, the other way we could demonstrate that would be to take one of our short 2-foot pieces that we haven't made a soft shackle out of and just fold it over and put it through. And that's going to give us a Lark's head knot on the line. Now we could use one of these to attach a rope to with a loop, and that will give us our sheep bend. Now, probably the easiest way for us to demonstrate a sheep bend would be to take this loop of line that's already here, put a line up through that loop, come around the back side, drop it back down through just like that, pull it down, and that's going to give us a sheep bend on that Prusik loop connecting a line to it. And for our Marlin spike, we've got 2 lines right here. All we have to do is take a bite in the line like we talked about, take a bite in the line and climb up the rope, stick a stake through there just like that, and boom. There's our Marlin spike hitch. Pull down on it, stays tight. Pull it out, it comes undone. Again, loop, climb the line, pull the loop through, slide a toggle in. Marlin spike hitch. Okay, so the last knot we need to tie is an arbor knot. An arbor knot is something that's tied to an arbor. Arbor being a cylindrical device, usually that spins or turns. And in the case of fishing, it would be the arbor of a fishing reel, and you would tie your line to that. Now, there's a difference between an arbor knot and a Canadian jam knot in the length of the tail on the stop knot. So if we're going to put a stop knot in the end of our line for an arbor knot, we want a short tail on that thing because we don't want it to interfere with anything when the line's coming off of a reel. However, if you're going to use this for a Canadian jam knot, and you're going to try to loosen the slip knot that you're creating basically to jam the stop knot into, then you're going to want to give yourself a little bit longer tail to start off with, something like this. And all you're going to do is you're going to wrap line around the arbor just like this. And then you're going to tie another overhand knot on the line so that this stop knot is on the same direction, basically, parallel to the working end of the line, so that when you pull this down and ratchet it, basically it pulls that stop knot into a slip knot and tightens down. With the Canadian jam knot, you can take this long tail and pull on it, and it will loosen that slip knot that you've created so that you can get things undone. If you're going to use this for an arbor knot on something that you don't want to come undone, that may shake around or move, you're better off coming up here and tying a really close stop knot against this. I'm just going to put a slippery one in here so I can get it undone. That will keep it from coming undone. However, we've got this long tail, so we can just pull it off here just like this, unratchet it basically. and then come in here and untie everything to get it undone. Okay guys, that basically gives us the 10 knots from the basic level training course here at the Pathfinder School. All of them incorporated pretty close to this ridge line other than the arbor knot, and we could have tied it around the tree that this same ridge line is connected to it and wouldn't have been a big deal. However, it's not difficult to be able to demonstrate all these knots pretty quick fashion, and you're using most of them anyway, either assembling your cordage management kit, assembling your tarp shelter system, or assembling your rapid deployment ridge line. There's only a couple that you're not using in there, and they're easy enough to demonstrate on the line as you go. So just wanted to give you guys a quick training video on the basic knots from the basic level survival training here at the Pathfinder School. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.